Alright, so last time, Audrey Strode and Albert Priddy were basically doing research on, like, what they could do about enacting a sterilization law, and most of them were struck down because of public sentiment, because, obviously the public knows what's best for them. These people think the public is clueless and that they should just be, like, cleansed or something, but overall, these people want their consent, and so of course they're voting no against this shit. Alright, anyways. In advising the board not to pursue a eugenic sterilization law, Strode may simply have been doing his job, arguing his client not to enact a law that would likely not win the support of the legislator, and if it did, uh, would only be struck down by the courts. Strode's advice may also, however, have indicated his own lack of enthusiasm for eugenic sterilization. Had he been a true believer, as Dr. Purdy and Dr. Janarnet were, he might have considered it worth the risk. After his discouraging legal assessment, Strode recalled later the board, quote, for the time, dropped the matter so far as I know. Dr. Priddy continued to use the colony's annual reports to argue for sterilization law, reflecting Strode's words of caution. He said that any new law would have to be carefully drawn, but he insisted that for some mentally defective woman, sterilization was the, quote, only solution for the problem. He reported that a bill was being prepared for the next legislative session. It is to be hoped that with the best legal talent to draft such a bill, he wrote, it will be written with the appropriate constitutional limits, and it will be enacted into the law, he noted, that the governor supported the law and the State Board of Public Welfare, quote, has always favored it. In the midst of his work to get a eugenic sterilization law enacted, Dr. Purdy married for the first time in October 1923. The 57-year-old superintendent wed Mamie Hardy Mitchell of Alexandria, Louisiana. As it turned out, the marriage was destined to be short-lived, and, like a good number of the leading advocate for eugenic sterilization, Dr. Purdy would not have any children of his own. He's probably covering his own ass because he thinks, like, oh, my kid could have, like, one eyelash out of place, and they'll be put in a goddamn concentration camp or a colony. So, yeah, these people know how fucking stupid that it would lead up to. Anyways. On the eve of 1924 legislative session, Dr. Purdy and Janarnet carried their troubles to, quote, A. E. Strode. Once again, as Dr. Janarnet later recalled, they told Strode that the state hospital board had asked that Strode draft a eugenic sterilization bill. The board believed that in time, since it last considered the matter, public understanding of heredity and eugenics had increased, and that changes in popular opinion made it more likely that the legislature and the courts would now support such a law. The superintendents also said Governor Albert Lee Trinkle supported a eugenic sterilization law and would sign a bill if the legislature passed it. This time, Strode agreed to draft a bill, but once again some of his actions suggested he might not have been enthusiastic about eugenic sterilization. Strode researched eugenic sterilization laws in either states, and he consulted a legal treatise Dr. Purdy had given him. Um, Eugenical Sterilization in the United States by Harry Laughlin, the assistant director of the Eugenics Record Office in Cold Spring Harbor, New York. Laughlin's book included a, quote, model eugenical sterilization law to help states in drafting effective laws that would also survive legal challenge. Strode made a, quote, diligent effort, he would later say, quote, to avoid the defects that have brought disapproval from the courts of other eugenic sterilization laws. Um, Strode's bill borrowed liberally from Laughlin's model law, but he narrowed its scope in significant ways. Strode included three of the categories of defect Laughlin had in the model. Quote, hereditary forms of insanity, quote, feeble-mindedness, quote, epilepsy, and he added imbecility and idiocy, which in the model were simply covered by, quote, feeble-mindedness. Strode rejected several of the model law's, quote, socially inadequate categories, blind, including those with serious impaired vision, deaf, including those with serious impaired hearing, deformed, including the crippled, criminalistic, including delinquent and wayward, diseased, including the tuberculosis, the syphilitic, the leprous, and others with chronic infectious and legally severable diseases. Inebriate, including drug habitues, and dependent, including orphans, ne'er-do-wells, the homeless, tramps, and paupers. And I think I read in the book The Gene and Intimate History that I think eugenicists were willing to put freaking some feminists in the camps too. Don't quote me directly, but I will have to figure that out actually after I read this. Um, Strode's decision on what to include and what to omit was significant. Laughlin's model law sought to usher in an era of mass sterilization in which anyone was in any way defective, including people who were merely poor or did not hear or see well, could be involuntarily operated on to prevent them from reproducing. Strode's bill made many fewer Virginians subject to eugenic sterilization. Strode added another major limitation to his bill. It authorized sterilization only when the state could show it was in, quote, the best interest of the patient. The eugenic sterilization movement generally did not concern itself with interests of the people it wanted sterilized. Neither Laughlin's model statute nor any other sterilization law in the country had this condition. When Virginia's law was challenged, its defender would boast that theirs was the only law limited in cases which, quote, the welfare of the patient will be promoted. Um, this was a provision that could not have legal difficulties for Strode's clients, because it gave inmates a legal basis to challenge sterilization orders, but it may also have been an indication that Strode was concerned about the human cost of the eugenic sterilization program he was helping to bring about. Yeah, I feel like it's possible he didn't want to deny him all of this to Jarnett and Dr. Purdy, and Dr. Strode is like, he's, I don't know, he's walking on eggshells, I think, because he doesn't want to lose his friendship, I think, with Dr. Purdy. I think that said they were friends. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, it would usually make sense to be like, actually, sir, we can't do this, but, you know, if he's sucking up to him in some way, whatever. Jesus Christ. Alright. Um, on one point, Strode followed Laughlin's advice closely. He put strong procedural protections into his bill in an attempt to protect it from constitutional challenges. Like Laughlin's model, Strode's bill created an expert body to make decisions about who should be sterilized. Laughlin vested this power in the state eugenicist. Laughlin vested this power in a state eugenicist, who Strode gave to the people who were paying the bills, while Strode gave it to the people. The boards of the state mental hospital, uh, following Laughlin's guidance, Strode provided that people facing sterilization had a right to a hearing and be presented at it. He also included, as Laughlin had, a right to appeal the decision to the county court, and as high as the U.S. Supreme Court. Strode also limited his bill in one more important way. Laughlin's model statute applied to anyone in the state, whether they were in matters of the state hospital or not. Laughlin argued other states to draft their statuses in this way for legal reasons. Eugenic sterilization laws had been struck down in 3 states: New York, New Jersey, and Michigan. as a violation of the Equal Protections Clause of the 14th Amendment because they applied only to hospital inmates and not to people with the same conditions who were not confined to hospitals. Laughlin emphasized that it would be an enormous strategic mistake to draw up any new laws that applied only to inmates. In his treatise, Laughlin called writing a law uh, that applied only to narrow parts of the population. Quote, the only great stumbling block eugenic sterilization had met, and he instructed that, quote, new laws must take great pains to avoid similar disaster.